Right now, somewhere in America, a man is spending $15,000 on a motorcycle. Not because it is the fastest, not because it is the most fuel efficient, not because any independent test has ever ranked it the most technically advanced bike on the market. He is spending $15,000 on it because of how it makes him feel. The sound, the weight, the chrome, the name on the tank. Harley Davidson is not a motorcycle company. It is the most powerful identity brand in American history. More than Nike, more than Apple, more than any sports team or fashion label. People tattoo this logo permanently onto their skin. Think about that. Harley Davidson has over 5 million brand-loyal customers who would rather walk than ride a competitor's bike. The company is worth over $6 billion today, and it was built by 2 teenagers in a shed with $10. This is the untold story of how William Harley and Arthur Davidson built the most rebellious brand on earth and changed America forever. To understand why Harley Davidson became what it became, you first need to understand America in 1900. The country was enormous. Distances between cities were brutal. Roads were unpaved dirt tracks that turned to mud in rain and dust in summer. The villain in this story was geography itself. America's size was its greatest obstacle. The horse was the only personal transportation most people had, and horses were expensive to buy, expensive to feed, expensive to maintain, and painfully slow over long distances. The bicycle existed, but human legs had limits. The automobile existed, but in 1900 a Ford cost the equivalent of 2 years of an average worker's salary. Ordinary Americans were trapped by distance, trapped by cost, trapped by a transportation system that had not fundamentally changed in 200 years. Into this world came 2 20-year-olds from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. William Harley was a draftsman with an obsessive mechanical mind. Arthur Davidson was his best friend, energetic, commercially sharp, and completely fearless about trying things that had never been done before. Together, they had one idea: attach a small engine to a bicycle and give ordinary Americans the freedom that only the wealthy could afford. It was not a new idea, but what they did with it was.
In 1901, William Harley began sketching designs for a small gasoline engine in his spare time. He was working full-time at a local manufacturer during the day. The engine designs happened at night, on weekends, in every spare hour he could find. By 1902, he and Arthur had a working prototype small enough to fit onto a bicycle frame. There was only one problem: it was completely underpowered. The engine could barely push the bike up a hill without the rider pedaling to help it. Milwaukee had hills everywhere. Back to the drawing board. William spent the next year redesigning the engine from scratch, increasing the cylinder size, improving the carburation, and rebuilding the entire power delivery system. Meanwhile, Arthur recruited his brothers Walter and William Davidson to help. In 1903, in a 10 by 15-foot wooden shed in the Davidson family backyard, with a $10 budget and tools borrowed from wherever they could find them, the 4 young men completed their first real motorcycle. The shed was so small that they had to work in shifts. The floor was dirt. There was no electricity. They used a handmade lathe that Arthur's father built from scrap wood to machine the engine components. And what rolled out of that shed in 1903 was not just a motorcycle. It was the beginning of an American legend. Here's the number that tells you everything about what they had built. Their first motorcycle entered a local race in Milwaukee in 1904. It finished 4th. Out of how many competitors? 5, second to last. For most people, that would have been the end of the story. William Harley went back to his drawing board. He completely rebuilt the engine again, this time increasing the displacement to 24.7 cubic inches and redesigning the loop frame that held everything together. The result was a motorcycle that could sustain 25 miles per hour over long distances without overheating or breaking down. In 1904, they sold their first motorcycle to a customer in Chicago. In 1905, they sold 8. In 1906, they built a proper factory, still tiny, still wooden, and produced 50 motorcycles. In 1907, they officially incorporated as the Harley Davidson Motor Company. And then in 1908, something happened that no advertising campaign could have manufactured. A police department in Detroit, frustrated with the cost of maintaining horse patrols, asked Harley Davidson if their motorcycles could handle law enforcement duties. They could. Within 2 years, police departments across America were ordering Harley Davidson motorcycles by the dozen. The most powerful institutions in American society were riding Harley Davidson, and ordinary Americans noticed. Through the 1910s, Harley Davidson grew at a speed that shocked even its own founders. In 1910, they produced 3,000 motorcycles. In 1913, they produced 12,000. In 1914, they produced 16,000. Each year, the waiting list grew longer than the year before. But the real turning point came in 1917. America entered World War I. The United States military needed reliable transportation for messengers, scouts, and officers operating across the battlefields of Europe. They chose Harley Davidson. Over the course of the war, Harley Davidson supplied approximately 20,000 motorcycles to the United States military. Their bikes performed in conditions that destroyed European competitors: mud, cold, shell-damaged roads, extreme mechanical stress. Harley Davidson bikes kept running. When the soldiers came home from Europe, they came home on Harley Davidsons, and they did not want to stop riding. The returning veterans formed riding clubs across America, groups of men who had survived the war together and now spent their weekends riding the same bikes that had carried them through it. These clubs were the direct ancestors of every motorcycle club and biker culture that exists in America today. Harley Davidson had not just built a motorcycle, it had accidentally created an entire identity. By the 1950s, Harley Davidson was the undisputed king of American motorcycling. But then, the Japanese arrived. In 1959, Honda entered the American market with a motorcycle that was lighter, cheaper, more reliable, and easier to ride than anything Harley Davidson was selling. Honda's famous marketing campaign declared, "You meet the nicest people on a Honda." It was a direct attack on Harley Davidson's outlaw image, and it worked. By the 1970s, Honda, Yamaha, Kawasaki, and Suzuki had captured enormous portions of the American motorcycle market. Harley Davidson's quality had deteriorated badly after the company was acquired by AMF, a sporting goods conglomerate, in 1969. AMF pushed production volume at the expense of quality. The result was devastating. Harley Davidson motorcycles of the 1970s were known for leaking oil, breaking down, and requiring constant maintenance. The joke in biker circles was that you needed 2 Harleys, one to ride and one for parts. By 1981, Harley Davidson was on the verge of bankruptcy. Then, 13 Harley Davidson executives, led by Von Beals, borrowed $81 million and bought the company back from AMF in a management buyout. They flew a banner over the Milwaukee factory that read, "The Eagle Soars Alone." They slashed production, rebuilt quality standards from the ground up, reconnected with the loyal rider community that had never stopped believing in the brand, and they went directly to the United States government and asked for import tariffs on Japanese motorcycles above 700 cubic centimeters. The government agreed. It was the lifeline Harley Davidson needed. By 1987, the company had recovered so completely that they asked the government to remove the tariffs 1 year early. They did not need protection anymore. They were back.
Here is what William Harley and Arthur Davidson built in that 10 by 15-foot shed that no Japanese manufacturer, no European brand, and no Silicon Valley startup has ever been able to replicate. They did not build the fastest motorcycle. They did not build the cheapest motorcycle. They did not build the most technically advanced motorcycle. They built a feeling. The feeling of complete freedom on an open American road. The feeling of belonging to something bigger than yourself. The feeling that whoever you are, doctor, lawyer, accountant, or construction worker, when you throw a leg over a Harley Davidson, you become something else entirely. That feeling is worth $6 billion, and it started with 2 teenagers, $10, and a wooden shed in Milwaukee with a dirt floor and no electricity. William Harley once said, "We did not build motorcycles to sell them. We built them because we could not imagine not building them." 120 years later, the world is still buying what they made. That is the untold story of Harley Davidson. Drop a comment below right now. Tell us which empire you want us to expose next on Untold Billionaires. The most requested name gets the next video. Your comment decides what we make next. Until next time.